Was I wrong for wishing I'd just stayed unconscious? Because when I woke up in that sterile hospital bed, the first thing I heard was the doctor explaining to me, a grown adult, that they'd called my parents about my collapse at work. My heart sank, not with fear for my health, but with a familiar, bone-deep dread. And then, the crushing blow, they never came. They didn't even call back. Instead, hours later, my sister walked in, her face a mask of concern mixed with an unspoken, "I told you so." Tell me, would you have been able to forgive them after that? Let me take you back to how it all began, long before I found myself lying on that cold hospital floor. I grew up in a household that, from the outside, probably looked picture-perfect. 2 loving parents, a slightly older sister, a nice house, good schools. But beneath that polished surface, there was always an undercurrent, a quiet hum of something being off. My sister, Clara, was the golden child. She was naturally brilliant, effortlessly beautiful, and seemed to glide through life with an ease that I, her clumsy, perpetually anxious younger sibling, could only dream of. I loved her, of course, but our parents' adoration for her was a sun that cast a very long, very cold shadow over me. My achievements, no matter how hard won, were always met with a polite nod, a faint smile, and then a quick pivot to Clara's latest triumph. My failures, however, were dissected with a surgeon's precision, each flaw held up to the light, compared unfavorably to Clara's flawless record. It wasn't malicious, not overtly. It was just their way. I remember once in elementary school, I got an A on a particularly difficult science project. I was so proud, I practically ran home to show them. My dad looked at it, grunted, and said, "That's good. Clara got an A++ on hers last year, remember? Hers had working hydraulics. I was 10, Clara was 12. It was a pattern that repeated itself throughout my childhood, a constant chipping away at my self-worth until I believed, deep down, that I was simply not good enough. As I got older, I tried desperately to carve out my own space, to find something I could excel at that wasn't overshadowed by Clara. I delved into art, music, writing, anything that felt inherently mine. My parents tolerated these hobbies, but never encouraged them with the same fervor they did Clara's academic pursuits or her eventual career in law. They saw my passions as frivolous, a waste of time that could be spent on more practical endeavors. The emotional distance grew. Conversations were superficial, revolving around logistics or, more often, Clara. I learned to keep my struggles, my fears, my dreams, to myself. It was easier than facing their mild disappointment or, worse, their indifference. Clara, to her credit, always tried to bridge the gap. She'd sneak me snacks when I was grounded, defend me in quiet whispers to our parents, and even helped me with my homework, though I always suspected she just wanted me to do better so our parents would stop scrutinizing my grades. She was my only real confidant, the one person who seemed to see me, truly see me, for who I was, not just in relation to her. When I moved out for college, it felt like escaping a gilded cage. I thrived away from their constant, subtle judgment. I chose a major completely unrelated to anything my parents or Clara would have pursued. I studied graphic design. It was liberating. I worked hard, made friends, and for the first time, felt a genuine sense of accomplishment that wasn't qualified by someone else's shadow. My parents, of course, paid for my tuition, but their involvement ended there. They rarely called, and when they did, it was usually to ask about Clara or to subtly inquire if I was reconsidering a more sensible career path. Graduation was bittersweet. I was proud, but their congratulations felt hollow, a mere formality. Clara, however, was genuinely thrilled. She flew across the country, bought me a huge bouquet of flowers, and took me out to a fancy dinner. She was so proud, her eyes shining, and in that moment, I felt a warmth I rarely experienced from my own family. After college, I got a job at a small design agency. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and I loved the creative environment. I rented a tiny apartment, furnished it with thrift store finds, and slowly, meticulously, built a life for myself. My relationship with my parents remained strained. I'd visit for holidays, enduring the polite smiles and the inevitable comparisons to Clara, who by then was a successful corporate lawyer, earning a hefty salary and living in a beautiful brownstone. My parents would beam with pride when they spoke of her, their eyes alight. When they turned to me, it was always with a slightly pained, "And how's your little design job going, dear?" It felt like a constant reminder that I was the lesser child, the one who hadn't quite lived up to their unspoken expectations. Clara, seeing this dynamic, often tried to deflect or change the subject, but it was an uphill battle. She even tried to get them to acknowledge my successes, my awards at work, my growing portfolio. They'd listen politely, nod, and then inevitably pivot back to one of Clara's recent cases or promotions. It was exhausting. The stress of balancing my passion with the quiet disappointment of my parents, coupled with the general anxieties of being a young adult trying to make it in a big city, started to take its toll. I was working long hours, often skipping meals, and burning the candle at both ends. I told myself it was fine, that this was just how it was, that I needed to push harder, prove myself. I developed a habit of ignoring my body's signals. Headaches, dizziness, persistent fatigue, I chalked it all up to stress and too much coffee. My landlord, a sweet elderly woman, often commented on how pale I looked, urging me to eat more. Clara, during our weekly phone calls, would gently scold me for not taking better care of myself. She'd always say, "You can't pour from an empty cup, kiddo. What's the point of success if you're too worn out to enjoy it?" I'd brush her off, convinced I was invincible, that I just needed to keep going, keep pushing. Then came the day everything changed. I was at work, hunched over my computer, trying to meet a tight deadline for a big client presentation. My head was pounding, my vision was blurring, and a wave of nausea washed over me. I tried to push through it, to just finish this one last thing, but my hands started to tremble, and the room began to spin. The last thing I remembered was a sharp pain in my chest, a sudden, blinding white light, and then, nothing. I woke up to the smell of antiseptic and the persistent beeping of a machine beside my bed. My head throbbed, and my mouth felt like sandpaper. A kind nurse was adjusting my IV, her face gentle. She told me I was in the hospital, that I'd collapsed at work, and that my colleagues had called 911. She said the doctors were running tests, but that I seemed to be stabilizing. Then, she delivered the information that pierced my already fragile state. "We've tried reaching your parents multiple times, but we haven't been able to get a hold of them. We'll keep trying." My stomach dropped. Of course. Why would they answer? Why would they care? It was a sick, twisted confirmation of every insecurity I'd ever harbored. My own parents, unreachable, unconcerned. Hours stretched into an eternity. The nurses checked on me periodically, offering water and reassurances, but the hollow ache of abandonment grew with each passing minute. My phone, which had been retrieved from my purse by a kind colleague, sat untouched on the bedside table. No missed calls from them, no texts. Nothing. It felt like a punch to the gut, a final, definitive statement on my place in their lives. The doctor came in eventually, a serious but gentle man, and explained that I'd suffered from severe exhaustion, dehydration, and a mild electrolyte imbalance, likely exacerbated by stress. He sternly advised me to take better care of myself, to rest, to eat properly. When he mentioned that they were still trying to contact my family, I just shrugged. "Don't bother," I mumbled, my voice hoarse. "They're probably busy." So that's the situation I was in, alone and vulnerable in a hospital bed, and I had to make a choice. What do you do when the people who are supposed to love and protect you simply don't show up? Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have called them out, demanded an explanation, or just cut them out of your life entirely? It was another hour or so later when I heard a familiar voice, sharp with concern, speaking quietly to a nurse just outside my room. My heart leapt, a flicker of hope igniting within me. Maybe they had come. Maybe they'd just been delayed. But then the voice became clearer, and it wasn't my mother's, nor my father's. It was Clara. She walked in, her usually perfectly coiffed hair a bit disheveled, her expensive suit slightly wrinkled. Her eyes, usually so composed, were wide with alarm, and there were dark circles under them, as if she hadn't slept. She rushed to my bedside, her face a mixture of relief and fury. "What the hell happened to you?" she demanded, her voice tight with emotion, grabbing my hand. "Why didn't anyone call me sooner?" I was speechless. Clara explained that my parents had finally answered their phone after multiple calls from the hospital, but they had simply told the doctors they were too busy to come and had given them Clara's number instead. Too busy. My own parents, too busy to come to the hospital when their child had collapsed and was unconscious. Clara had been in the middle of a crucial trial, preparing for closing arguments, but the moment she got the call, she dropped everything, leaving her team to pick up the pieces. She raced to the hospital, calling my apartment building on the way to alert my landlord, who then rushed to the hospital with a small bag of my essentials and fresh clothes. My landlord, a virtual stranger, was more concerned, more present, than my own parents. Clara sat there, holding my hand, her thumb gently stroking the back of my hand. She didn't scold me, not really. She just looked at me with an expression of profound sadness and understanding. "They really let you down, didn't they?" she whispered, her voice cracking. I just nodded, tears finally stinging my eyes. It wasn't the physical pain that made me cry, but the crushing weight of that realization, amplified by her presence. Clara stayed with me for hours, until the doctors finally cleared me for discharge later that evening. She organized a taxi, made sure I had all my discharge papers, and even bought me a light dinner from the hospital cafeteria. She didn't leave my side until I was safely back in my apartment, tucked into bed, with a fresh glass of water and some pain medication beside me. Before she left, she looked at me with a fierce determination. "This stops now," she said, her voice firm. "You deserve better. We're going to talk to them, really talk to them, and if they don't get it, then they don't get us." The next day, Clara called our parents. I listened on speakerphone, my heart pounding. She didn't yell, she didn't scream. She spoke with a controlled, icy calm that was far more chilling than any outburst. She laid out everything. How I'd been admitted to the hospital, how they hadn't come, how they'd fobbed the responsibility off on her. She told them, in no uncertain terms, that their behavior was unacceptable, that they had emotionally neglected me my entire life, and that this incident was the final straw. My mother tried to interrupt, to make excuses, to say they had a very important dinner, but Clara cut her off. "Dinner? You chose dinner over your own child in a hospital bed. Do you even hear yourselves?" The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. My father eventually mumbled something about misunderstanding and being busy. Clara didn't let up. She told them that I was hurting, that I had been hurting for years, and that if they wanted any kind of relationship with either of us moving forward, they needed to acknowledge their actions and genuinely apologize, not just to me, but to her for putting her in that impossible position. She even threatened to cut them off entirely, her own parents, if they didn't take this seriously. I had never heard her speak to them like that before. It was breathtaking. The aftermath was complicated. My parents, shocked by Clara's uncharacteristic fury, did eventually come to my apartment a few days later. They were awkward, hesitant. My mother cried a little, my father looked deeply uncomfortable. They offered a stilted, conditional apology, full of caveats and justifications. "We didn't realize it was that serious," my mother said. "We thought Clara would handle it," my father added. It wasn't the full, heartfelt admission of guilt I desperately craved, but it was a crack in their impenetrable facade. Clara, who was also present, interjected, correcting their excuses, forcing them to confront the true impact of their actions. She made them look at me, truly look at me, and acknowledge my pain. It was a slow, painful process, but that day marked a turning point. Our relationship with our parents is still fragile, still healing. I've set clear boundaries, something I never dared to do before. I limit my visits, and I've learned to disengage from their subtle jabs and comparisons. I still love them, in a way, but the unconditional devotion I once felt is gone, replaced by a cautious understanding. The truth is, that day in the hospital, my parents lost a piece of me they can never get back. But in their absence, I found a deeper, fiercer bond with my sister. Clara became my unwavering champion, my rock. She helped me realize that I wasn't just the other child, that I was worthy of love and care, even if it didn't come from where I expected it to. I'm taking better care of myself now, prioritizing my health and well-being. I've learned to say no, to take breaks, to value myself. This whole mess taught me a vital lesson: family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up for you, who stands by you, and who makes you feel seen and loved. And sometimes, the people you expect to be there are the ones who let you down the most, while others, like a sister who drops everything, remind you what true unconditional love looks like. So, if you've ever felt like you're not enough, or if your family has let you down, know that you're not alone. And know that you deserve to be loved, supported, and to have people in your life who will show up when it matters most. Like this video if you were on my side, and if you understand what it's like to be let down by the people who should have been there. Subscribe for more stories like this, where real people share their raw, emotional experiences. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I want to hear what you would have done. I'll see you all in the next story.